All of us have a story to tell, don't we? It's closed in our hearts. Today at VirtueTech, we lead you to open up and let it out. We are here at Speak Your Heart, a series of interviews with women in the IT world. At this time, we want to hear from our women. Speak about your journey. Where all had you been? Speak about your people. Who are the main characters of your story? Speak about our technology. What do you love the most? Speak about this world that we share. Most modern, most fast paced, most agile world of data technology. I am Bhakti Joshi, Marketing and Alliances Head at VirtueTech Inc. And today our guest is Elaine Tanella. We are very happy to have Elaine as our guest today. She is the Director of Product Management, Data and Analytics at Condé Nast. She has been with a variety of cultures and people. Probably that's why I found her personality to be very open and expanded, easy to interact with. There are so many great things about her that it would need much more time to do justice, but I try my best. And looking at the list, you would probably think she's much older, but she's actually pretty young. She has been the chairperson of THON 2012. She's been a THON dancer herself. So THON is the largest student-run philanthropy in the world. They work on child cancer. She has increased the revenues of big organizations by as much as 100% year on year, with her product strategies employing latest and greatest of data techniques. She has done majors in biomedical engineering. She has done a program in China at Peking University. She respects her roots. She learned Italian and makes conscious efforts to get connected with her original roots. I'm sure there are a lot of interesting anecdotes Elaine could share with us. So let's get chatting. Elaine, first of all, I want to ask you about um, the your career, the journey of your career um, up until now. So you have achieved great targets, and the numbers show it all. You know, the numbers speak for it. So, and tell us about how you have reached here, and especially the part that people don't see, something which is not easily seen. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think it's easy, as I'm hearing you speak about my career, I'm like, wow, this is the bio of someone who knows exactly what they want and goes after it. And, and transparently, I'm still the person who doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up, like most kids say. For me personally, what's driven me is just a deep desire to learn and grow. And that's been something that's been a part of my nature through my education to various steps in my career. I ended up in biomedical engineering because I liked biology and I liked math, or I was told I was good at it. So that's how I ended up there. Learned a lot, almost taught. I always like to say that engineering is an incredible field of study because even if you don't end up practicing it later in your career, you end up learning how to learn or learning how to teach yourself various things. And that's kind of what I most took away from my education. And, through that, it led to this innate curiosity or awakening of this curiosity that, whether that's cultures in the world or traveling or new experiences in my career and job where I've transitioned from working in consulting with more of that biomedical focus to working in advertising technology to media and publishing, and now more so with a focus on data. And I think sort of what's brought me to this focus on data is it's this very complex, often talked about concept that can feel like a behemoth and it's hard to understand. But what excites me and what excites me in the future of my career is trying to make that easily more accessible to various people, whether they're talented engineers or folks that are writing articles or writing content who may not necessarily be as exposed to this type of information. So still learning what I would like to do in the next couple of years of my career, but I'd say curiosity and And that's been a huge focus for me in just each step along the way.
Great. So that is what brings out the best in you, following your curiosity and doing what you enjoy. Nice to know. Elaine, interestingly, when I was going through your profile, I saw at one of the places you were talking as a chairperson of the THON, and you mentioned that you protected it from deviating from the real purpose, right? So that sounded like real integrity. So I felt that, you hold ethics high in value. So um, coming from that kind of personality, that kind of background, we would love to hear from you your opinion about your candid opinion about today's world, what we are facing as humanity, COVID and Ukraine war, and do you think it affects our world of data technology, and what do you think about it?
I think definitely. I mean, I think about the world that my parents grew up in, the world we grew up in, and there were equal conflicts or conflicts also in their time. But I think what makes it
Right.
feel different now in our generation is the amount of information we are able to receive at a lightning fast rate from many
Interesting.
different sources. And that at times can feel inundating, right? Like it's, I think a lot of us want to be informed about what's happening in the world, right? To form our own educated opinions and not necessarily be swayed by any one source.
Yes.
But it's also important to note the drain that that can have emotionally and mentally on oneself, and understand in a way when to, I must call it like time boxing of reading news, right? Like, because
Yes.
like I admitted, I'm very curious and I like to learn. So I'm the person that can go down that rabbit
Wow.
hole 3 hours later.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's important to be educated and informed. And, we're at the end of the day, we're all part of the human race, right? And
Yes.
part of what's in my travels that I've enjoyed is just realizing, regardless of what culture or country you're part of, we're all much more similar than we are different. And I think that, taking that, understanding it, and bringing it into the workplace is especially important, because a lot of companies at the end of the day want to make money. That's, what, how they operate, which is is great. And oftentimes there's missions behind that. But I think just, even if, we're a one in, a 100,000 person company, taking the context and understanding the ecosystem of what's happening in the world, also understanding that regardless of where the person is you're working with, what country they're in, that we're all human and that we all have similar desires, needs, relationships with other people around that can really help guide how you treat one another. And I think trying to wrap this back up in a neat little bow for an answer that I've been meandering a bit is just, people are human, and humans are important, right? And I think for me, holding that value true to my core, whether it's working with a charity in my college years, or spending time with my own family, or exploring my neighborhood, or even at work, is just inherently believing that you should treat people with respect and value, and understand again that there's a wide breadth of things that we don't necessarily know about each other and that are happening in the world that are impacting them. So kindness and respect go a long way.
So, Ilan, it's very nice to hear from you, and you are such a nice person. It feels good that good people, ethical people, are successful and at significant positions. So that's great. So, Ilan, actually, we want to grow past the stereotypes and the conditionings of our minds, right? We want to have that kind of consciousness as we go along. And as women, sometimes we face those innate challenges, right? As we in our day-to-day life or in our some significant points during our career. Do you think that it matters, or have you faced any major challenges being a woman in the tech industry?
Definitely. I think regardless of what industry any woman is in, there are challenges, right? Um, you look across the world at what's happening right now, and you can't, you know, you have to acknowledge that women are treated differently, regardless of the way it is in countries like the United States have made many strides in promoting equality for women, but there's still a long way to go here, and there's tremendous way to go across the globe. I think, while I haven't faced as many, I would say, challenges maybe as others have in their career, I think it's important to recognize. And one of the things I often see women doing is sort of like apologizing for the way that we are, or the way that we act in a meeting or something we said. And I think we need to stop. We need to stop apologizing. We have, every single human has a different personality, right, than each other. That's what makes us unique and like snowflakes, right? Everybody's a little bit the same, but slightly different. And I think that in understanding that, we have to acknowledge that what we're doing, or our thoughts, or the way we might do something in a job or a process or propose something is not something to apologize for. That our ideas and values can be, are warranted and unique and important. I think that especially in the field of technology and data engineering is often more of like a male dominated space. And it makes me really happy to see in at least United States in the last decade or so, there's a lot of programs that are aimed at women or other genders that are not as represented in tech, and
Right.
to promote and offer, education and work programs. I know there's Grace Hopper is a program in the United States where
Right.
they offer basically like a boot camp, if you will.
Yes. Yes.
And, I think that's amazing. And I think we need more
Yes.
of that to promote, what seems like a very daunting field to enter, right? If you are signing up for a major at university or even in high school, and you see that the list of students is mostly male, it can be overwhelming, right? You want to see someone who maybe is more like you, so that you can find camaraderie. Not that we can't have amazing friendships and partnerships with male students and male colleagues, but I think the more that we can make rooms look more diverse, the more that people are going to pursue these fields that right now maybe feel a little bit more challenging or overwhelming to be in as a woman.
Sure. Yes, that is good to hear. Because we want to increase the consciousness about this. And that conditioning, that unconscious conditioning of the mind. That's what we want to bring to light, and then we can work on it. So, Elaine, do you have any message for the women out there who are about to transition their roles or industries?
I think that my piece of advice would be, it's okay not to know everything. Like, I think, again, as women in these fields that may be more technical, you want to show up and be able to add value from day one. And I think understanding that anybody in a transitional period in your current career, or maybe where you aspire to be in the future, it's okay not to know what it takes to do that job, or to what it even takes to get there, right? And accepting that can sometimes reduce maybe some of the stress or anxiety that we feel when thinking about these or making these large transitions. And just being accepting of that can sometimes bring a peace that, we can ultimately end up swirling around in our head.
Yeah, so it ties back to what you said earlier, being unapologetic and confident, and just to present yourself as who you are. And it's especially true also for returning women, right? So who are returning from probably a maternity leave or something like
Right.
that. So yeah, that's very, very significant. That's very important thing, right?
Yeah.
Elaine, can you talk about the most exciting data and analytics projects? Because I actually checked through your profile. You have achieved great results. Like you have even added 100% increase in revenue for significant companies, not like small organizations. I mean, small is not easy. I don't mean that, but to be working with some place like New York Times and Condé Nast, and and then making such major changes. So we would really, really love to hear from you. what do you find interesting? What is your approach? And how do you keep yourself so much upgraded with the latest of tools and techniques in data technology?
Absolutely. I think for me, especially as time goes on, we collect more and more data, and more data doesn't always equate to better results. And what makes this field exciting to me is finding the relevant pieces of data and how they tie to maybe other things that we would have never imagined. That speaks, for example, to my current career, where we have a commerce business and a commercial business, so advertising and affiliate marketing. And there are a lot of common threads between these two, and there's a lot of data for both of them. And I think what makes the field of data and data products interesting is being able to figure out how you tie these together to not necessarily help just one or two or even three pillars of an organization, but cumulatively help the entire organization. I think, staying up to date, you can read all of the medium.com posts by sort of like pseudo influencers there, or read LinkedIn. I like spending time with my colleagues. So I'll, if I have a question on a particular piece of technology, I'll set up time with our, head of data warehousing or one of our engineering managers and just, ask them questions. I think that that type of approach is maybe more different than others who maybe attend lots of webinars or events or, stay up to date with the newest platform. But I like that because it not only serves the purpose of educating and, satisfying that curiosity I have, but also building a relationship in the process that ultimately might make both of our jobs easier down the line when we maybe have to work on an initiative together.
So I'm going to follow you on LinkedIn, and I'm
Yeah.
going to set up time with you because
Yeah.
that's a great give and take,
Yeah.
and like you said, it also good for, our relationship to grow. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Elaine, I find it very interesting, the people factor in our corporate world and our industry, and we are dealing with such latest and cutting edge technology and all of that. So, how important do you think is the people factor? How do you find good people in the team that put team before the self and not self before the team and things like that? How do you identify, because you don't have all the time always, right? So how do you kind of evaluate a personality?
Yeah. I mean, I think that people are the most important aspect of any piece in the company. I think no one company, even if you're trying to start your own business as an entrepreneur, you might start as one, right? But you're going to need to scale. And I truly believe that if you can surround yourself with good people, even if it's unclear what exactly their skill set will contribute to, you'll be able to accomplish great things. A wise mentor of mine once passed on the piece of advice that it's people, process, technology, right? You can find good people that want to be a part of a team, that value working together over individual accomplishments. You can put processes in place, and then you can find technology to support that. I think, unfortunately, a lot of companies get it the other way around. They get technology, process, people. And I think that people are the most valuable aspect. I think a lot of it can come to light in like a behavioral conversation, right? Like a behavioral interview that you've been through and just understanding how they've handled situations in the past. I also think that, a lot of it can shine through just in casual conversation, like how someone holds themselves. Do they interrupt? Obviously Zoom's a little bit harder because it just feels, I know we're all getting used to it, over the last couple of years as teleconference technologies evolved, but sometimes the interruption is unintentional just because of the lag and you don't feel the gesticulation in the room. But other than that, I think you can tell a lot from how someone, the tone of their voice, references from other people. And as much as I hate to say something very hard to grasp like this, the vibe or like the feeling that you get from having a conversation with a person, like I trust my instinct. And it hasn't always been perfect, but I'd say the majority of the time it leads me in the right direction with the people that I want to surround myself with.
No wonder, to someone who has led a group of more than 15,000 students, right? So I'm sure your instincts are well developed and for that, So, yeah. Elaine, so your ancestry is from Italy, and you are born and brought up in the USA.
Yes.
Given that, how important is your culture and your roots? How important are your roots for you? And what do you do about it? Do you make any conscious efforts? How do you keep it alive? What do you think about it?
Yeah. In my family particularly, like a lot of our heritage shows through in our like traditions. And obviously some of them are like our family specific, but it's something that, as I learned more about growing up and learned about like the great, I'd say, influx of immigration in, the 1900s, and learned more about what my ancestors went through to come here, and getting on a boat to just come over with little money and, work jobs without speaking the language. Just, it was fascinating to me because it's something I hadn't myself ever experienced it or couldn't fathom. And it led me to want to learn the language and learn a bit more, and um, you know ask my grandparents questions about this. And it's led to me to travel Italy a lot. I had the opportunity to study there, and it's just something I'm passionate about. It sounds silly to put in words, but every time I go and visit, especially in the southern part of Italy where my heritage is from, people always ask me, "Oh, where are you from?" Like thinking I live in Italy with my very broken Italian that I can't speak very well. But it feels in a part of a way like home, even though I obviously have only visited a handful of times. But there's something just about every time I go, I can pick up something of like understanding maybe why I am the way I am, or why my family is the way I am. But I think while I'm fascinated about my culture, I think one of the common things I've seen as I've traveled different countries in Europe and Asia and Central and South America is just family is kind of the root of everybody, right? And family being the epicenter of sort of like your life in a way, obviously to varying degrees. And it kind of rings true for me with my ancestry and sort of what's driven sort of my research and just general pursuit of my understanding more about my background.
That's really wonderful because we most of us have a very rich background and very deep roots of where we come from. So it's very good to get connected back to our origins and our roots. It's very interesting, and it's something that everyone should give a thought. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate you making so much efforts and bringing out things like
Yeah.
that. So um, Elaine, can you talk about how do you balance your work life and your personal life? Do you really, because sometimes it feels like anyways both the things flow into each other and all different aspects of your life, and how do you strike a balance? Because once you pursue your career, you're super successful, then how do you make sure that you are not falling short on the other phase of
Yeah.
your life, your home? Yeah.
Right. I think one of the things I've learned in my career, while balance seems like it's something that you can do, right, like on a scale where it's very easy and you're like, let me just move this a little bit, it's challenging, and it evolves and changes even day by day or job by job. And fortunate or unfortunate, I think I was early in my career, I worked at a large consulting firm, and just starting my career, I wanted to work really hard and be successful. And I think it really showed me how much that scale could tip in one direction or another, how you could be working all hours of all night, or you could create a balance. And there were still people who had only worked from their 8 hours a day, did a really great job, and were present at home. Obviously, not every week. There are some weeks where there are deadlines or things like that. And I think it struck a chord with me to really make an effort to, I can, be intelligent, I can do good quality work, but I don't need to work all the time, right? There will always be something else to be accomplished or something else to work on. The work will never end, but I'll never get the time back in my life to do the other things I'm passionate about, to spend the time with people outside of, my office or my day-to-day career. And I'm thankful for that experience because I learned so much about what I want. And so for me, what, you know, I started doing in my next job after that was, showing up at the hours I was required. If there was something, of course, urgent, I'd stay late or do it, but I made sure to arrive on time and then leave when I was done. And I was fortunate to have a lot of supervisors in my career that were very supportive and had the sort of mentality of, you get your work done. I don't care if it takes you 2 hours or 10 hours. If you produce good quality work, I'm not going to hover over your desk and make sure that you're here. But I think having that conversation with a supervisor of your working style, what's important in your life, even outside of work, and what your needs are is important, because a company isn't going to care if you work 10 hours or 5 hours, right? They're always going to want you to work more because that means maybe more output for them. But on the human level, working out with your team internally, what the expectations are. And for me, expectations are good quality work, right? And that's something that I've carried forth in my career, something that I've learned early on, to have that balance. Because I think that if a person can get fulfillment outside of their job, they end up showing up as their best self to the work. And so I've always encouraged, when I've had team members on my team, when I've led larger teams, who send an email at an off hour, I'm like, you could send that tomorrow. There's nothing that's urgent or an emergency, that's going to impact this. And it's kind of a cliche to say, but at least in my field, we're not doctors, so no one's life is going to be necessarily at stake if we don't send that analysis or that email. And
Right.
so take that time to have dinner with your family, or go see a friend, or go to the gym, or work on something for yourself, because that's time you won't get back.
Yeah, great. So that's also something you learn along the way, because it's easy to get sucked into the
Yes.
inundating things to do, and then it's your responsibility to make sure. And then you should have a talk with your team and your supervisor and make sure you're balancing things out. So that's great
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And Elaine, we are going to ask you to share a secret. You can take your time.
Sure.
So, what is the secret thing about yourself that you love the most?
Hmm. I'd have to say that I have my memory is really crisp and good in some ways, and then awful in others. But for me, I always remember like personal details that my coworkers will tell me. So like that someone might be like, "Oh, I'm taking my son to a fall festival this weekend," and I've been told, I'll come back around to this, but I've been told from like former colleagues and mentors, like my superpower is that people trust me, and like that was kind of like, is that a superpower? Like, and like, because for me, I'm just being myself, right? And to circle back around to the initiative, like I'll genuinely ask how someone's weekend was and how that event was, or how their son is, not because I'm trying to suck up to them or get in good favor, but because I care. And I think it's sort of not necessarily that it's a secret, but it's something that I think I hadn't quite ever like articulated in a way of like being a unique quality of mine, that not that people don't know because they might pick up on it, but something that has helped me like build relationships, because I'll remember these really weird stories or events that someone will have told me months ago about, again, what shaped them as a person, not just as an employee at X company. And I think that's been a little bit of like a secret sauce to building relationships over time. And, some colleagues transition into, lifelong friends that way.
Thank you for sharing that with us,
Yeah.
Elaine, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah,
And
of course.
uh, we really wish you all the very best for your
Thank you.
career, and have a nice day today.